Before the show starts, this is a reminder to all our listeners that the podcast is an open discussion forum and not meant to be used as a source of direct professional help. We at Panic Stations UK would always urge anybody listening to go seek advice from their GP, that is their doctor, a counsellor or a therapist. The podcast is, however, a place for people to share experiences and realise that you are not alone. Due to the subject matter discussed in the shows, some episodes may have explicit language in. I warn listeners as this is meant to be a realistic look at mental health. As such, you may find that some of the guests use some pretty colourful language. I ask all listeners just to freely accept this and to honour the guests that are on the show. It's their journey and it's their freedom of speech, and we at Panic Stations UK would never do anything to discourage that. Many thanks and enjoy the show. And it is Wednesday, or it should be Wednesday by the time this thing's come up. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Panic Stations UK, the mental health podcast. And of course, as always, I'm your host, Chris Jones. I hope everybody's had a really nice week, or whatever you've been doing. I hope it's been really, really, really good. And obviously, I hope that this finds you safe and well. Okay, so this is going to be part 3 of my interview with Chris Young. We were talking about walk a mile in my shoes, the way he was spreading his personal journey about mental health, and it's been a fantastic interview. I really, really want to thank Chris before we get on to that, because he's been so good and patient, because obviously I've had to chop the interview up into 3 pieces, and I really want Chris to come back, because I've actually had a couple of emails asking if he can come back, and I spoke to Chris during the interview and asked, look, can you come back? And with fingers crossed he'll turn up. Because he was really, really interesting, a thoroughly nice chap, and to be quite ruthlessly honest, I've nothing but respect for the guy. Really lovely guy. So thank you, Chris, for turning up on the show. So before we go on to part 3, obviously we've got to keep looking forward, because it's all good to remember this stuff, but you need to keep going forward as well. So what is in store for the future of Panic Stations UK? Well, I've got some good news. I've got another really interesting interview with a really nice bloke called Charles Steinbach. He's an author, speaker, and a life coach, and he's going to be on next week talking about obviously his own personal issues about mental health, his book and his candle business, and it should be quite an interesting little talk. Obviously, it's nice to get little spectrums from all over the globe. So this really nice bloke is going to be talking about obviously the issues that he's had to deal with, the fact that he's obviously a life coach now, the fact that he's a published author, which is really, really interesting, you know, and I think it's good to vary the guests that we have. So I personally can't wait, because it's a really, really interesting take on things. So we'll be having his interview next week. So that should be next Wednesday. So can't wait for that. That'll be Charles Steinbach, and obviously he's going to be talking about his experiences. Now, before we carry on with Chris Young's interview, his final part, I am putting a plea out there to anybody who wants to get involved with Panic Stations UK. Now, it's not just for your own personal way of expressing art through music. If you want to some music being shown on the show, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. You want to talk about your own website, that's absolutely fine. That's all good. The reason I'm doing this call out is for the fact that I've got a really good idea. There was a big discussion about cannabis and the effects it has on mental health, whether it's a plus whether it's a minus, and it's a very heated debate. So I thought what would be good would be in a few weeks' time, probably looking at months, because I want to build a bit of momentum on this. We're going to do a great cannabis debate, and I'm going to have, with luck, the plan is, if I can pull this off, it's going to be a conference call, and it's going to involve lots and lots of participation from guests. So hopefully I can get a bunch of people on. And we're all going to discuss the concerns and the way people are looking at the issue of cannabis use, and how it's linked to possible mental health issues. How some people actually think it's a cure for mental health issues. Some people think it actually causes mental health issues. There's no right or wrong at the moment. It's just personal opinions on these things. I have my own personal opinions. I'm not going to air them until the debate itself. Obviously, we're not saying, it's pro because you've got to do it. You've got to do it because, obviously, far from it. It is an illegal drug. We can't stress that enough. It's an illegal drug here in the UK. We wouldn't advocate you breaking the law or taking an illegal substance. Far, far from it. However, there's nothing wrong with healthy debate and a discussion on the topic itself. And it's seen as a taboo, but it's also a very interesting subject at the same time. So we're going to have the great cannabis debate, and I'm offering a olive branch for anybody who wants to get involved in that as either a guest, or if you want to send in a anonymous letter, because I know it's quite a sensitive subject. Some people might not want to discuss their own personal issues with cannabis and how it's affected them, or if they still do it or not. And I understand that. So mine is not to judge or criticise. Mine is just simply to say, look, obviously follow the law. Don't break the law. Far from it. We'd never advocate that, and obviously that's not what we're asking. We're just asking your opinions on the situation, and it's going to be a friendly debate. It's not going to be bickering or dramatic or anything like that. It's going to be a friendly debate about obviously the subject itself, and that's going to be in a couple of months' time. So we've got one message to play, and then we're going to go cracking straight on to Chris Young's final part of his interview. I hope you're going to enjoy it. We get on some really nice things, and the guy's an inspiration. So first off, though, here's a message from my boy John Cross.
You may know him as John Cross from the podcast From the After Movie Diner, or you may not know him at all. But now you can know him as Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures with the release of his new album, Catch Up or Don't, See If I Care. Available now on Bandcamp, iTunes, Amazon, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, and wherever music is found. A full 16 new folk, blues, and rock tracks from this bearded singer-songwriter. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and at aftermoviediner.com. For links to the album and to learn more, go to miskplumbingfixtures.blogspot.com or miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com.
Cannot stress enough that you should go out and buy that, because it's really good. I own a copy of it, and I'm not just saying that because John's one of my best friends. I'm saying it because he's a bloody talented guy. So he's a past guest. He runs his own podcast, The After Movie Diner, and that's always worth a listen because it's hilarious. He's also part of Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid. Got to give props to Doc Action because he is brilliant as well. Check their kick-ass commentaries. You can get all that on iTunes and TalkShoe. So go for it. Anyway, without further ado, because I keep going on about it, here it is, the very, very final part of my interview with Chris Young. Again, I'd like to thank Chris for what he's done, and enjoy the finale. But yeah, so sorry, Chris. Like you said before,
about the fact that like the walk being just now, like being the walk being good for you. I remember having a counsellor once saying to me, if I was ever having a panic attack, to go out and just stare at leaves and trees, anything that's green. I always remember saying that. Lovely lady called Lindsay, and she was saying, just stare at the trees, because apparently it does have, like you say, a very calming influence.
Yeah, I can imagine that, and I love that. I can be found staring at a caterpillar for half an hour and just stopping, and then there have been times when I've got a bit tied up with clocking up miles and thinking I really ought to be walking X miles today, and then very quickly, Ella or my mate Derek will say, "You're a twat." It's
There's
not
your
about
support.
the distance. Yeah, that's the support you need. You need that little bit of honesty. It says,
keeping it real.
It's not about the miles. It's about the experience. It's about meeting people. You've always said that. So be true to yourself, there, Chris. So
yeah, definitely.
So that's what I've done. But there's a story niggling at the back of my head that I feel compelled to tell you.
Go for it.
I was on the east coast of Scotland, just north of Anstruther, which, if you ever go to Scotland, if you ever go to the east coast of Scotland, go to the Anstruther Fish Bar, because their fish and chips are out of this world. And if you're a wandering lunatic, they're free. So anyway, I had this wonderful experience, and I tanked off another 5 miles, and I was on the Fife Coastal Path, which it's a bit like the Pennine Way. There's a lot of passing folk. So the thing is, sometimes you need, when you're out there in the wilds, you need a number 2, and there's no toilet.
Yeah.
So I was in that very position, and there were people passing by. It was in the morning, and I was up at 6, but there were already people passing by, and I'm thinking, I can't do a poo because these people are passing by. So I got myself into all kinds of strange positions in my tent, and somehow managed to do this said number 2, bagged it up and put it outside, just on the edge of my tent for future burial. I carry a trowel with me for exactly that purpose. So a quick blog had come to my mind, so I was writing a blog while I was just waiting, and then suddenly I was aware of a bit of a kerfuffle outside the tent, and suddenly I was aware that a dog had stolen my poo.
No.
And there's a man going, "Hey, no, put that down." And I'm thinking, do I shout, "Hey, you, come back with my jobby"? But that was just one of the things that I didn't shout. So I just sort of relaxed in my tent and just hoped that the world was going to go away. And I just hoped against hope that this dog wasn't going to be one of those jumpy uppy licky dogs, because he destroyed my poo and it was just everywhere. It's just horrible animal. But yeah, hey, that's the wild and wacky world of being on the road.
I'm sorry.
In other news, I was walking. I'd been invited to stay with this woman and her husband in Peterhead, and they'd been incredibly friendly, and they really looking forward to me coming to stay with them, and they'd been texting and emailing. So I eventually got to their house, and the first thing they did was they said, the woman sat me down, and she said, "Here's a drawer of stuff. It's a box of stuff. It is lotions and potions and all kinds of things. if I had pain or if I had blisters or anything, they were all there for me to take. So I said, thanks very much. And it was there that I came across the dish that's Cullen skink. You ever heard of Cullen skink?
What the hell is that?
Cullen skink. Is nowhere near as exotic as it sounds. It's whitefish in cream and potato and onions, and it
Ooh.
is God's own food. And this woman just shoveled this into my face. Every time I looked like I was taking a breath, more of this would appear, and that's what they fed me with. But anyway, so they gave me the run of they gave me the living room, and there was a big bed in there, and I just felt incredibly cared for. It was a Sunday when I woke up, and the guy, the husband, was a fisherman. He was a skipper on one of the boats. But on Sundays, what he did, he went down to the harbour to help the other guys with their ships, with their boats, with their nets and stuff like that.
Wow, that's dedication to the cause,
He is
isn't it?
absolutely lovely man. But before he left, he looked at his wife and he said, "You be careful what you talk about." I sort of looked at him, I looked at her, I looked at him. I thought, interesting. So and off he went. I didn't have long to wait. She said to me, "I know what's wrong with you." And I said, "So do I. Got a condition called borderline personality disorder." She goes, "No, I know what's really wrong with you. Uh, Go on, fire away. Tell me." She said, "You've you've been possessed by demons." Okay. And she told me how over the past few days she had been fighting the devil on my behalf.
Okay.
And but she was, I don't know, she was fundamentalist for a better description. That was her belief. She fully believed that that's what had happened to me, that I had demons, and that the only way that I was going to get rid of these demons was if I welcomed Jesus into my heart.
Wow. So,
So
in many ways, very, very old school
yeah,
remedies to mental
yeah,
health issues.
yeah. So it wasn't just the GP; it was it was her as well. So so I explained. We had this long discussion, and I did my best not to offend her because I thought the hospitality here has been second to none. They've really looked after me. My aches and pains have gone away. I think I'd had about 3 baths while I was there, and they've been lovely. But we on this particular thing we disagreed hugely, and it was funny that at that point I thought to myself, well, in a way, I do have demons. When you talk about people, they have their demons, and I have these things that come and visit me, and but they're not demons. They're more your demons of literature rather than actual
Your
beast,
metaphorical demons. Yeah.
species that bump in the night. And it reminded me of meeting up with a friend of Lou's while I was walking, and we had dinner at theirs, and Lou and her partner had been invited round, and this woman and her partner were there, and the woman whose house it was, Jan, she looks after a friend who's got MS, who she uses a wheelchair, and we went kind of round the table as they told me about their maladies, and they're kind of humorous about the spongy feet and the fact that you know that they take these incredible medications, and but at the same time that the people who love them look after them and stuff. And I remember sitting there with them, and those demons were there with me because I'm thinking, shit, I've got this mental thing. Why can't I just pull myself together? The self stigma was strong. I'm thinking these people have got proper conditions. They've got multiple sclerosis, and at the same time, I'm thinking, why don't I just pull myself together. So in a way, it awakened that part of my head that made me think, gosh, shit, yeah, you know, well, it's the same thing, having demons or having metaphorical demons. It's the same result. There is a lot of internal squabbling going on. But so that kind of opened my eyes to that. But anyway, so yeah, it's been interesting that the variety of people that I've met, religious, not religious. I've stayed with Labour voters. I've stayed with Conservatives. I've stayed with Scottish National Party voters, and I've stayed with a UKIP voter,
Wow.
and they've all been fabulous. All of them. And the UKIP voter, I've got to say, came as a big surprise because we were sitting there and I was talking about politics and God knows what else, but we were talking about politics, and I would have put her left wing of Marx. I thought, this is a really left wing person. The feeling was she wasn't going to vote Labour because they weren't left enough. And when she said, "Yeah, I voted UKIP," I nearly fell off my seat. I
Oh
thought,
my
"Gosh, that's interesting." And again, she was in an environment where she felt completely disenfranchised by the current government, didn't know where to go, and UKIP seemed to, at that time, offer her an answer. I'm pretty certain she's not going to vote UKIP now. I think she rapidly linked him with Adolf Farage, rhymes with garage, with
certain
Adolf
members of the
Hitler.
Reich.
Yes. So, but this is the thing. People are so quick to divide themselves up. People are so quick to say, "I'm not like you." You vote this. You believe in that. You're gay. Uh, you're this. You're that. And yet, I'd say that I don't know. I've yet to meet a person on the road that that has been unkind to me.
Wow,
Um,
that's phenomenal. That
and
really is genuinely. It's actually, you know what? It's actually uplifting, really
yeah,
uplifting to know that.
and that was, I guess that was the belief I left with, that that's what people are like, and they haven't let me down, and it is like having faith because you don't know who you're going to meet from one day to the next, but just this belief that people are going to be fantastic. I mean, for example, North Wales. I have English friends who've said, God, the bloody Welsh. You go to Wales and you go into a pub in Wales and they start speaking Welsh just to exclude you. And I've said to them, that's a bit like going to France and saying they start speaking French in the pub just to
Yeah,
exclude
why are
you.
these people all speaking French?
It's the first bloody language. That's the language that the people in North Wales, that's their first language, is Welsh. So, that's the language they're going to use when they're hanging out with their mates. So, and the other thing was, I was told that, the most unfriendly people in the world are Welsh farmers. Welsh farmers are hateful. They hate the English. They don't like anybody. I was walking along the road one day. It was last summer, and it was roasting, absolutely roasting. And what I do when it gets hot is I stop walking, get myself into shade, and then I start walking the hour before dawn up to 12 o'clock, and then I batten down the hatches again. But this day I'd got it all wrong, and it was the afternoon, and I was melting. And this farmer, big burly Welsh farmer, jumps out of his house and goes, "God, it's really hot for this kind of behaviour, eh?" And I said, "Yeah, bloody is." And he said, "So what are you doing?" And I told him what I was doing. He said, "Do you want to come in for a cup of tea?" So I went in for a cup of tea, and he said, so I said, what my plans were, and he said, "Well, I've got a static caravan there, if you like." And he said, "It's got a shower in it, it's got telly." He said, "You can help yourself." He said, "We have dinner about 6:30. Is that okay?"
Wow.
Uh, and and in my back of my mind, I'm hearing the echoes of these people going, "Oh, the Welsh, the Welsh, the Welsh," and Welsh, and you know, and there he was, just offering me his home, and that was me sorted. And that it's just brilliant, just a kind, gentle man who was happy to hear a story and happy to sort of feed me and send me on my way.
That's amazing.
And as I say, it's time and time again, that people say people from this part of the country won't be friendly, and they are. Uh, Even here in Ilmington, I've been walking around the village like some kind of lunatic. I've got laps, so 6 laps equals 5 miles. So people have started talking to me as I'm listening to your podcast. By the way,
Oh, wicked!
listen to your podcast. I'm catching up with you, and I also listen to MIT lectures of undergrad psychology. So just to keep my finger on that particular pulse.
Well, Panic Stations UK exists to dumb you down, and then the MIT brings you back again.
That's it. So I was walking around yesterday, and I bumped into this woman, told her what I was about, and normally when I'm out walking, when I'm walking on the coast, I never wear headphones because I've always got this hope that I'll bump into somebody and they'll be talking and I won't hear stuff or I'll miss something. Whereas here, it's just the blind sort of getting fitness thing.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to stuff and just in a little world of my own. So I got talking to this woman who said, "Well, I'm moving down to Devon in the summer, so if you're crossing by, I can't remember which village it was. Yeah, you can come and stay. You can come and stay with us." You hardly know me. This is the second time you've ever seen me in your life, and you're offering me somewhere to stay. So even here, people are being generous and kind. So I think I don't know. It's a kind of crazy, mixed up world we live in because on one hand we've got all these people falling over themselves to be kind and generous, and on the other hand we've got, and this is what the story that people need to hear is that mental health is a political thing. It's people need to hear that there is no parity of esteem with mental ill health. So say if you've got a physical problem, and you're diagnosed with some physical malady, you're guaranteed that within 18 weeks treatment will start, or that hospital will be seen as failing. If you've got a mental health problem, there is no waiting time. There's no official waiting time. So I know of people who've been given my diagnosis and have had no treatment whatsoever. They've had a GP who hasn't got a clue what they're doing because it's a complex condition, and even the experts I've spoken to have only had half a day's training on it.
That's ridiculous when you think about it.
It is it's crazy, but so we've got people who have had no treatment. And with this condition, I am, I think, somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 times more likely to take my own life. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 35 in the UK. Every year, 6,000 people take their own lives in the UK. 6,000 people. 75% of whom are men. So this is the message that needs to get out there, that this is happening here and now. For some reason, things like Ebola in another country are seen as sexy. So we have 6,000 people die of Ebola, and Bob Geldof has a Band-Aid for it. They bring out a record. And yet something that's so close to home for him, He's had 2 suicides so close to him. Maybe it's just, it doesn't have to be him, obviously, but someone could draw together a fundraiser to say, look, this is going on here and now, and ever since austerity, the figure, it had been 5,000 people taking their own lives a year. It had gone up to 6,000 because of austerity. So people need to think of these figures. That's it's a lot of folk.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, like quite rightly, you're quite rightly saying is like, really, if I'm honest, it's only in the last 20 years that the UK has really started to push a bit more with mental health, and even now, I just like the cuts and everything else that they've been mentioning, and I think they did there was a discussion recently about child mental health, and the fact that the children and teenagers have got a lot of these complex problems, but they can't afford to put in the proper conditions for them.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to cut from adult mental health care. But the problem is, somewhat ironically, is if you do that, you're going to create more for the adult. It's like this circle. You're going to create more for the adult mental health.
Yeah. I mean, we've had Operation U-Tree. We've had the Savile inquiry. Child sexual abuse is at the forefront of everybody's mind. But for some reason, we're obsessed with the punishment of the offenders and not so much with the support of the people who've been abused. And I'm a classic example of somebody who has experienced that kind of thing. I have all the symptoms, and people will be coming through with these symptoms, and there are cutbacks upon cutbacks upon cutbacks, and it's an intolerable state of affairs. But at the same time, people are fabulous.
Yeah.
People that you meet, people that you talk to, people are ready to talk about this. They just don't know how to. That even if they make a complete arse of it, if they say loony or crazy person or nutter, give them time, allow them space. If you look at language, I'm hopping about here again.
No,
if you
it's
look
fine,
at language, the police force in London, they're very politically correct. They don't use any racist language. So on the face of it, they look like they're a non-racist enterprise. However, if you're black in London, you are something like 5 times more likely to be stopped and searched. You are then 7 times more likely to be arrested if they find drugs on you. The BBC did a recent study of a housing, not housing association, but a letting agency. They had 2 researchers with exactly the same backgrounds, the same made-up backgrounds. One was black, one was white. The black guy would go along and say, "Is this house still available?" They'd say no. The white guy would go along and they'd say yes. And that's happening now. This is a problem that we thought was over, done and dusted, because the language that people use, it has been diluted, but those attitudes are still there. And what we need to be working on are the attitudes, and they're less easy to measure. They're not quite as out there. You can see when somebody uses language that you'd rather they didn't. That's easy to measure, but a racist attitude or an anti-mental healthy attitude, or they're difficult to dig out. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you remember the hoo-ha over the mental hospital patient outfits for Halloween that came out a couple of years ago.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I remember that.
And there was a massive hoo-ha. It was there was a news item that had come out that said something like 30,000 people with mental health problems are dying early from physical illnesses because of their treatment from everything from their GP to hospitals. So that was the headline. And then what happened was this story about the Halloween costumes came out, and that bumped that off. The big story that 30,000 people were dying needlessly bumped off. Let's talk about Halloween costumes. Let's talk about baddies and goodies. Baddie as the nasty Andy Clark, I think was the name of the CEO of Asda. You're a bad man. You're selling these outfits. Along comes Mind making an awful big racket about this. Terrible. Yeah, we're fighting for you. You know, the people with mental health problems. We're on your side. We're going to stop them from selling these things. That's fair enough. They did. They stopped them from selling these mental health outfits. Asda gave Mind £20,000. Not another word was spoken. And I thought, what a bloody shame. Here was a great opportunity. Mental health is in the public eye. Here's a great opportunity for a conversation. Here, we can talk to Andy Clark of Asda. We can have the conversation with him. You know, why, you know, the Halloween outfits might not be a good idea. Personally, I don't know. I've got to the point where there's not much that rattles my cage. I couldn't give a toss. Like I say, my concern is people's attitudes. You know, I want people to be caring and compassionate, and if they don't know about something, to be willing to listen. And yet, £20,000 goes to Mind, and the whole story dies. I wrote to both organisations, and strangely, didn't get a thing back.
Oh, I was about to say, it'd been interesting to find out if you'd got any feedback.
No, not a sausage. So, but you know, I just thought that was a great opportunity. But I just think there's so many grey areas where we can start making inroads, where we can start talking to people. Speaking to kids at school, even I've spoken to sixth formers, and already they've got this kind of notion of political correctness. Now, political correctness often it's language, so they find incredible difficulty in using words that might they feel might harm you to your face. But already they've got this kind of overly caring, kind of almost disabling attitude towards people with mental health problems because they don't know. There was a recent study done by I think it's the RNIB. It's not the lifeboat people, but the blind people, and they got some people to put blindfolds on for the day, and they worked out that this put blind people back years because the people who put the blindfolds on thought, shit, being blind is hell. You can't do anything for yourself. Whereas most blind people can do an awful lot for themselves. Most people with mental health problems can do an awful lot for themselves. So there's so much going on, so much that needs to be worked on, so much that needs to be thought through. I think a lot of people who are on benefits, for example, because applying for benefits is so bloody terrifying and awful thing. You're sort of dragged through the mill. It's so demeaning, dehumanizing that even considering going for a job is terrifying, because if you get this job and then a couple of months in you can't do this job, you have to go through the whole fucking rigmarole again.
Yeah.
And we need a system that is there when people need it. And and I think that would get more people in work doing things, so it'd have people feeling more valuable about feeling that they're more valid in the world, and that they're more valuable to society. And it would be a win-win situation. But for some reason, we've got this cockamamie, bloody punitive, tough love approach to work and disability and illness. Sorry, went off on one there, but
No, it's very valuable, and it's actually a very fair point. You know what? A couple of episodes back, I mentioned about there was a big thing about the greeting cards. Yeah, I don't know if you got to that episode yet.
No, I don't. I think I have, but it's a spoiler, isn't it?
It's a spoiler. Sorry, spoiler.
Tell me.
It was about the there was a greeting card in a shop in London, and it was I totally forget the exact ins and outs, but it was essentially taking the piss out of people. Oh no, it's keep calm and take Prozac or something like that.
All right.
Or lithium.
All right.
And I was just there was a big hoo-ha because people were going, well, hang on a second, this is really out of order because you're essentially taking the piss out of mental health, and that really that pissed me off as well.
Right.
Because for me, it felt like it wasn't so much a joke. Like, I always remember a greeting card that I saw that was 2 cows, and it was one cow goes to the other one, "Are you scared about mad cow disease?" And the other cow turns to the other and goes, "Why should I be scared? I'm a helicopter." Right? So excuse me. So when I saw this greeting card, it wasn't that kind of context. It was almost trying to be fashionable to take prescribed medication for mental health illness. So I had an issue with that.
Yeah.
Having just spoken to you now, I just listened to kind of another flip side of it, because I got all very high and mighty with a couple of my mates on Facebook. They were like going, "Oh yeah," well I was like, no, it's bloody travesty. Get on my soapbox.
Pitchforks and torches. Yeah,
that's the one. And I was like, "You're totally wrong. It's not even funny." And then my mate actually mentioned, "Well, use it as a thing for the podcast." So I was like, "Okay, I will. I bloody will." So I did, and then I thought, okay, I'm done with that. But what you've just said about the thing with Asda and the thing with Mind rings true. It still rings true. Yeah. You've actually made me think a bit more about that one thing, going, okay, there's that issue. Why don't you use it as an open invitation, as dialogue, rather than lambasting everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of talking about the language and getting those pitchforks nice and toasty with the fires, getting them stoking.
I think the thing that's helped me at the back of my mind is that people are fabulous. And people will make an arse of things. But the whole sort of austerity politics thing, it's not working just now. And the more people that talk about it, the more people that become involved in the dialogue, I think the better chance we have of moving forward. Because otherwise, we've just got polarized camps. We've got a group going, they're a bunch of bastards, and they've got the other group going, they're a bunch of bastards. And you've got your mates patting you on the back and saying, you told them, didn't you? And nothing moves, nothing changes. I've got to say, my point of view isn't terribly popular.
Really? I think that's a great point of view.
People, I think, aren't falling over themselves because they understand the goody, the baddie sort of setup more.
Rather than the shade of grey.
They want to be intolerant of intolerance.
Right.
And I've tried to say, there is no movement. There's been a classic example of exactly that just recently. That there's a woman, Sue, I can't remember her second name, but she wrote the diary of a benefit scrounger, and for 6 years, this woman with Crohn's disease has been turning out this informative, educating blog, very well written, and a lot of people have hung on her every word. Now, she hasn't been able to work because Crohn's disease is bloody awful. As a social worker, I work with people with Crohn's disease, and it's debilitating, and you have to have bits of your body hacked out, and it's painful and unpredictable. So I'm sure you're aware of Atos. They're the people who do the work capability assessment.
Yeah.
Well, they've removed themselves and they're being replaced by an organization called Maximus, which is an American company who, by all rumors that kick around the place, are as big a bunch of bastards as Atos were. However, what Maximus have done is approached this woman who is the writer of Diary of a Benefit Scrounger, and they've asked her to be to work for them as the user experience specialist. So they're going to pay her for doing this work. Now, the good people of the social media have called it everything from Judas to God knows what, just laying into her because they've been betrayed by this woman. Now, I know as a social worker, I tried as much as I could to change the system from within, and it's fucking hard. And I know that that's what this woman is going to try and do. She's going to try and change the system from within. She's still got Crohn's disease, so I'd be interested to find out what their sickness policy is at Maximus. But she is doing what she thinks is right. And yet all these people have suddenly gone, oh, you're with them, you're either with us or against us, you're against us, fuck off. And that's the kind of thing that goes on. And we need to not do that.
We need to be going, hey, we've got one of us in with them now. Brilliant.
And personally, I thought it was great news. I'd much rather have her in there than some faceless bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Because over 6 years, you see somebody's credentials, you see what somebody's about, you get a really strong flavour of them. And I really felt, she's of the people for the people, and yet, immediately she was flipped over to become this kind of this hate figure. So I think that's where a lot of the work has to be done. I think people like Ian Duncan Smith, who blunders on with his his welfare reforms, I think he does so because he doesn't know anybody like me, and that suits him. But if we can reach out, if suddenly people are all bobbing around in the grey area, then there'll be greater understanding on both sides.
Yeah.
So, as I say, it's a battle. It's an ongoing thing, but that's certainly where I'm laying my hat. I think that working together is the way ahead. I think polarization, it feels good at the time. You can say, yeah, they're a bunch of bastards, and we're the good guys, or even saying I'm fighting on your behalf. That all feels good, but there's very little movement in it. So that's kind of what I'm about.
Right, I'm going to wrap it up because we're almost on 3 hours. Because I could talk for another 3. This is fascinating stuff for me. So I'm just processing everything. It's amazing. Chris, when's the film coming out? Come on, give an idea. Give us a rough guesstimate. I'm itching to see
I need
it.
to put pressure on the lovely Johanna. She's been editing for a stretch now. I think she wants to do a little bit more filming. The idea was for it to come out this year. It's either going to be later on this year or early next year. That's the impression I've got from Johanna. Um, but yeah, I'll be pushing for that because I'd like it to come out because then there could be another one because
Yeah.
if most of the filming has been done around Scotland, we could call that the Scottish chapter, and then we can have the English Welsh chapter.
International. What's stopping you going to the States?
Yeah, there is that. I've spoken on a radio station in the States as well. So
That would be fascinating.
it's I yeah, I suppose there's the danger. I always, I mean, this is my pig ignorance. I imagine, the tent scenario where the woman ran me a bath. I imagine doing that in the States and just sort
Waking
of
up in a
popping,
dungeon.
waking up and having my head blown off. So yeah, I don't, I don't know, but but then again, you always meet people who've done something fantastic. I was in a place called Achmore, which is Scottish for big field, and so in
What a
Achmore big
great name.
field, I met this girl. She was 12. I was putting my tent up, and she went, "Hello, what are you doing?" And I told her what I was doing. She went, "God, that's really interesting." She said, uh, "I've." Me, my mum, and my dad have just finished a journey where we cycled from Alaska down to Chile.
What?
I have to meet your parents. And it was Easter at the time, and they invited me round. I'd had an Easter dinner with them, and they were fabulous. But so that just showed to me that the States is obviously a lot safer than I think our television would have us believe, or their their multiple cop shows would have us believe. But she was so confident, this 12-year-old girl. Her mum was a teacher, and she was incredibly confident. And her mum just laughed. She said, "Yeah, they were on a really tight budget, so when they were cycling, they'd stop at a campsite and they'd be having noodles for tea." And this girl, who'd be 10, 11 at the time, would wander over to these great big Winnebagos at the campsite and go, "Hi there, what are you having for tea?" And these guys would be, "Well, we're having steak, we're having prawns and this and that." And she'd say, "We're only having noodles." "Oh, why don't you come and join us?" So
Wow.
she did that from North America right down to Chile. It's just an amazingly confident girl.
Beautiful.
Absolute honor to meet that group of people. So yeah, the States. I think that things like that made me think, well, that's probably a lot more possible than I'd originally thought.
Well,
So yeah, I think once this is done, there'll be I'd like to think I'll be doing a lot more shows. I've had a few nibbles regarding a book,
nice.
and just as I say, getting that story out there because this is a happy story. This is a good news story.
It's a really uplifting, fantastic
Yeah,
story.
yeah. I really appreciate you having me on.
No,
It's
trust
been great,
me.
and letting me ramble on.
Hey, no, look, I'll obviously split this episode up a bit.
Yes.
But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Chris, if I may be so bold to put you on the spot right now,
Yeah.
I'm sure I speak for all my listeners when I say it would be really nice to have you on a more regular basis.
Yeah. But there's nothing I like better than talking. Okay, so I'm your man.
Brilliant. That's perfect. We're going to arrange some more of this because I think it's a really uplifting tale. I think you've got a lot to say. I think you've got some fantastic insight from where you've been, and certainly to walk to where you're going is just incredible. We know the film's coming out at some point, hopefully in the towards the end of this year, beginning of next year. I know that I will be putting links all over the shop regarding the links to your Facebook page.
Thanks for that.
Which is very easy to find. If anybody goes onto Facebook and just put "walk a mile" in the actual Facebook search bar,
right,
it pops in. So it's even better.
How easy is that?
It's easy peasy. Especially when I will be putting the links to this podcast. So it'll be attached to the podcast itself, and people download it.
Excellent.
I'll put it on the Facebook page, and I'll put it on the YouTube channel as well. So don't you worry about it.
No, thanks for that.
Please come again, Chris. What I'm going to
Yeah,
do,
I will.
we'll sign off now. So I'll wish you all the best for
No, I really
more,
appreciate that.
and we
Thanks.
will speak soon.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, you take care.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye just now.
Great guest, just a really great guest, lovely bloke. I can't stress enough. I could have spoke to him for hours, and we did. Bear in mind, we were speaking. We thought we'd only be about an hour. We were talking for about 3.5 hours in the end. What a bloody lovely bloke! And Chris, if you're listening, thank you so much for enlightening our listeners. And please turn up again, because you have got yourself a permanent seat at Panic Stations UK if you ever want to sit down and talk or get involved with anything, because quite frankly, fascinating bloke, really interesting, and just a bloody nice guy. So thank you so much for all that, Chris. So that's the very final part of Chris Young's interview done. I really, yet again, thank you very much for your participation, Chris. And don't forget that next week we'll be starting our interview with Charles Steinbach, who's the author, speaker, and life coach. And he's done a lot about stuff with chronic paranoid schizophrenia. So it should be really interesting to speak to him and obviously talk about the mental health issues and life coaching and general positive stuff. So can't wait for that. So join us next time at Panic Stations UK. Remember, if you want to get involved with anything, like I mentioned before, the Great Cannabis Debate, that'll be going on in a few months' time, please feel free to get in contact at panicstationsuk at yahoo.co.uk. That's panicstationsuk at yahoo.co.uk. Many thanks, and remember, you are not alone.
Wake up, dry your eyes, time to face a long night with a brave smile. Dive headfirst into the dark with your shaking hands clenched in a soldier's heart. I know where you've been, I know where you've been. You're not alone in this swirling world. You have my hand. You have my hand. Wake up, dry your eyes, time to face a long night with a brave smile. Dive headfirst into the dark with your shaking hands clenched in a soldier's heart. I know where you've been, I know where you've been. You're not alone in this swirling world. You have You have my hand. You have